You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Join us now for the expert source for inside information on the options markets. It's time for Options Insider Radio with your host, Mark Longo.
All right, everybody, that music means it is time once again for Options Insider Radio, the interview program here on the old network where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of options and derivatives and indeed beyond and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And next up on the old network, an old friend of the network. I do mean old because he hasn't been on in quite some time. He is Mr. Dan Cook, the Director of Business Development over there at Nadex. Mr. Cook, welcome back to the Options Insider Radio program.
It is great to be back, Mark. It has been way too long. You were right in every definition of old, though. Well, we go back quite a ways, I believe. Experienced, yeah. Well seasoned, perhaps.
Yes.
We are.
Well done. Like I said, it has been, I think, at least a couple of years since you've been on the network with us here. So you guys have been up to a lot of stuff. Maybe even before we even get to the new stuff you're up to, let's go back even further. We have a lot of obviously new listeners have tuned into the network since your last appearance. Let's go back even further and start there, sir. Give us an overview. What the heck is Nadex? What do you guys do? What can I trade with you guys?
Absolutely. Nadex is unique, really, in the option space and the trading space. It's really the first exchange that was designed for the individual active trader. Smaller contract sizes on the most popular markets. We offer 3 contract types. Some of this we've offered for a while. Some is very new. We have binary options, touch brackets, and call spreads. 3 very distinct ways to trade. So depending if somebody's maybe a very short-term scalp type trader and they want to be involved in options with defined risk, they can trade a very short binary options type contract. Maybe they're more of a swing trader and something like the ES. They might look to a touch bracket. Maybe they're looking for trading some volatility around news announcements or maybe a premium collection. They might look to the call spread. But all contracts, whether they're based on currencies, commodities, or like stock index futures, are all defined risk. So that's one comfort level. You can never get a margin call. You can never lose more than you put up for a trade. It's all fully collateralized. And so that's one thing I think I'm most proud of, is creating a fair level playing field and democratizing the markets so that everybody with a bit of risk capital can participate. Oh, and one other thing, there's no active or there's no pattern day trade rule with any of the Nadex contracts. So you can be as active as you want with regard to your trading activity. If you want to trade 5 times over your lunch, 5 times in the afternoon, you can do that.
Nice to be in that binary realm. Well, it is interesting to mention you guys have kind of been known as kind of the go-to players in the binary space for some time, but it has been a couple of years since you've been on it. You mentioned you kind of have updated not just the product offering, but kind of the whole look and feel of the Nadex platform. So maybe let's start there. What have you done to the platform, Dad? It's so different. It's all kinds of new bells and whistles. Give us an overview of some of the upgrades you guys have made since the last time we've chatted here.
Yeah, 2019, well, all the years have been pretty busy, but 2019 in particular, we really, at the beginning of the year, made a decision to renovate the whole customer experience. We've seen the world around us evolve. People expect a very smooth onboarding journey. They expect a very intuitive platform, and quite frankly, we were behind in both of those areas substantially. So kind of in the background, we've been burning everything down while maintaining what was existing. So we're looking at, we launched in October a new beta web platform, much more intuitive. We're going to continue to build that out. If anybody wants to check that out, they can go to nadex.com. It takes 30 seconds to get a demo account, and can check out the beta version of the platform. We're going to be adding a lot more bells and whistles. It's much more responsive, much more intuitive than our old legacy platform.
You said that very large, very, very meaty install. Not the case anymore?
No install. Basically, it's web-based. You can load it from anywhere. You can trade on the go with our mobile app, which we launched in beta last year, and now it's a fully functioning model. The one thing I think I'm most proud of with both of these are the application for the phone that we developed, as well as the web platform, is that it's all based on feedback from our members. We have a very fast development cycle. We try to add everything as quick as possible. Obviously, some things can be added quicker than others, but everything we add is based on feedback, and that's how we prioritize everything. And so it makes for a very smooth, fluid experience, and we really encourage our members to help shape the future of their trading experience at Nadex.
And obviously, a lot's gone on in the binary space as a whole since the last time you and I chatted. Probably a lot of the listeners may be familiar with the broad headlines that have been coming out of that space for the last couple of years, where big platforms like Google, big platforms like Facebook have decided they just don't want to play in those waters anymore. And I can certainly understand that for a large 10,000-foot view kind of firm like a Google or a YouTube. They look at the space, and we certainly see it here at the Options Insider all the time. We are reached out to by, shall we say, less than savory participants in the binary space on a regular basis. So I could see how they would see that and say, you know what, this space is just, we don't want to be there anymore. So how challenging has it been for you guys as kind of the lone representative of the, shall we say, the better actor in the space, the regulated, you have an office, you exist, you can go there, you guys are in person, I can verify that you exist in. So that alone puts you ahead of most of the players in your space. How challenging has it been for you guys to say, wait a minute, don't lump us in with the rest of all these characters over the past couple of years, sir?
It's been a huge challenge, quite frankly, a huge challenge. As you mentioned, the Apples, the Googles, the YouTubes of the world really see it from a 10,000-foot, 30,000-foot view even, and they hear this term binary options, and there are a lot of unsavory companies out there, not based in the U.S., not regulated, that tout what they call binary options historically, that were just designed to take people's money. Nadex being regulated by the CFTC, based in Chicago, we have real office, real people, you can come visit us. Getting the word out and trying to set the record straight about the difference between what we're offering and really what no one else in the world, for the most part, is offering in the regulated fashion that we are, has been a challenge. Now, we continue to make strides. We've continued to work with all of the big players. We'll call them the quasi-regulators, right? Because when you're a YouTube, when you're an Apple, when you're a Google, you control so much mind share. If you make a rule, you become...
They're effectively regulators now, which is a crazy thing to think of.
They effectively are. And so, we work with them. We're trying to work with them. We're continuing to, spread the message about this is why these are safe. This is why they're really a great choice. It's so unfortunate that this ever happened with the upspring of the Cypriot-based bucket shops, we'll call them, because it really muddied those waters. And it turned a lot of people away from the binary option offering based on really misconceptions. And so, we fought and we continue to fight because they are a great contract to trade. They're a great contract if you're starting out, and even if you're an experienced trader, they offer a lot of unique advantages, particularly for situational trading, that you just can't find anywhere else.
Was there ever a point when, everyone was beaten up? I think even Zuckerberg commented on at one point, when all these platforms, everyone's dumping on the space. Did you ever say, what the hell with it? We're not going to call them binaries anymore. We're going to call them, quickies or custom, something like that. Did you ever get that far down the rabbit hole? Or
it never really materialized. I suggested one time calling them Nadex options, just because that's really what they are. Nobody was offering them really in the same.
Just brand them yourself.
Just brand them ourselves. However, just by their very structure, the way a lot of the rules were written, it was the structure of the contract, the all or nothing at expiration. And one of the big misconceptions about binary is that they are all or nothing. But they're a very tradable contract. If I buy a contract at 30, I don't have to wait to see if I get 100. If it goes to 60, I can sell. If it goes to 70. They're just like trading any other option in a lot of ways, in that they're very tradable.
That's always been the shame of it for me, is because you're right. Intuitively, they offer a lot particularly for the intro retail trader to understand. They come to a regular option, they have to learn about pricing and intrinsic versus extrinsic value and volatility and the Greeks and all these things. And certainly it helps to know those as well if you're trading binaries. But if you look at a binary price, you could kind of instantly intuit what the heck is going on there. If you see, let's say it's an energy contract with oil. If it's going to be over a certain level by a certain time, if you think it's about a 75% probability that will happen, the price is going to be 75. That's a pretty intuitive. It's a 50-50, it's 50. If it's 0, it's not. If it happens, it's 100. That's something that I think even the basic introductory retail person can wrap their heads around. So that was always the shame of it to me. It's like the product itself actually is well crafted to get those people on board and have an intuitive contract. Yet the regulators, these YouTube, all these other platforms lump it all in with all the other detritus out there, Dan. If I'm frustrated, I got to imagine it had to be frustrating for you as well.
Absolutely frustrating. But one of the things you said, that's with binary options, with actually all of our contracts, they're a great way to learn the fundamentals of options without having to spend, a lot of the intimidation that can come with the traditional options. For example, as you mentioned, price in a binary option is simply the probability. Will this event happen or not? And it's that probability or delta. Basically, the price of binary option is just the delta. And by the way, if you don't know what delta means, but you're interested in learning options, then probably a binary option is a great way to start because you can learn to intuit what delta is, which is obviously a factor in the pricing of a traditional option, directly from a binary option. Let's
get into what people are trading. Let's get away from all this negative stuff. Let's get into the fun stuff. What is the hot thing? Obviously, you guys have upgraded the platform, probably have some new products since the last time you chatted. What is the hot thing right now? People are coming to Nadex, they're clicking login, they're clicking trade. What is the big product everybody's trading over there these days?
Currencies are still very popular for us. We have some very short-term currency products. The way that market flies around, there's a lot of interest there. Also, things like the E-mini S&P or the ES contract, what we call the US 500. The NQ, what we call US Tech 100, is always a big contract.
A lot of one yesterday when they hit their new high, right?
a lot of action in those types of contracts. And the great thing is, no matter what's going on in those markets, right? Over the years, you and I have talked in times where there's no volatility and in times where there's extreme volatility and everything in between. One of the nice things about having the span of contract offerings that we have is there are strategies for any type of market condition. It might be one Nadex product or the other, but they're so flexible. If the market's just paper, just flat as a piece of paper, you might look at doing something which is much more akin to a premium collection strategy on a short-term binary option. So there's a lot of flexibility.
Would you say your audience leans one way or the other? For a lot of, let's say, short duration contracts in the traditional equity options world, a lot of it is premium harvesting. That's the way people have adopted them. On Nadex, is it something similar? Are people mostly writing the contracts, or because they're so cheap and so short term, are they buying them? Is there one way that the audience leans?
It's fairly well mixed across the audience. A lot of people, when they're looking at binary options particularly, they might be trying to buy a high probability, thinking, okay, it's at 80, I feel comfortable this is going to go to 100. Maybe it's sitting at a level of, it's above a level of support. It's not going to drop. It's going to go to 100. On the other side, there are quite a few that say, you know what, I'm expecting a big move. I'm not looking for it to stay, fairly still. In that case, they're going to be buying at 20, 25 to try to get the $100 payout, or selling a high probability one if they're looking for more volatility. In any case, and you mentioned writing, just want to reiterate, the one nice thing is if they're writing or selling a Nadex binary option or any Nadex contract, their risk is still defined. So unlike just, if they're sitting out there naked in the traditional options world, all of a sudden they can get their face ripped off. That can't happen. You always know up front what your max risk is.
Yeah, if you sell that 80, like you mentioned, it can only go to 100, right? It can't go to 1,000. So you don't have the infinite risk, which I'd imagine is a little more palatable for some of the folks out there who are just coming onto the platform for the first time. Speaking of things being palatable, I know in the early days when you guys are kind of kicking things up a notch over there in Nadex land, one of the challenges I know, and part of your job, is going out there and chatting to the market-making firms and getting them on board to deepen the pool of liquidity out there on Nadex. How has that process been going for you? Have you found market-making firms, are they receptive to binaries? Have they been caught up with all the headlines like everybody else and say, we don't want to get into this? What's that part of your job been like over the last couple of years as you're going out there and spreading the gospel to the market-making firms, Dan?
They haven't had the same misperception. They're some very smart individuals. They've been very receptive. One of the things, as we've grown, so when I was out there in 2011 and Nadex was doing 1,000 contracts a day, it wasn't that enticing, just from an opportunity standpoint. But as we put together the track record and as they saw the growth, We've been able to secure those liquidity providers, which is very important. We've seen the cost of trading through the bid-offer spread come down so substantially over the last few years, just because we have added those additional high-quality liquidity providers that are really, particularly for a retail-type product, putting out some really damn good prices.
Obviously, one of the challenges people have always said about binaries is the last few minutes, right? When things start getting hot and heavy and you're moving and you're getting close to that 0 or 100, right? So that seemed to always be the pain point for a lot of market makers. I don't want to play in that because I know how to make that work with my models. Have they come around to that over the last couple of years, too? They're able to wrap their heads around those last few minutes, which I know was scaring a lot of those firms off in the past?
Yeah, the last few minutes, the way a binary option moves, for those of you that know options, it's basically exploding gamma. It is flying around. The difference between one tick is the difference between 0 and 100 at expiration. So if you're sitting right at that strike price and it's ticking back and forth, the probability is changing from 10 to 90 to 15 to 80 very quickly. So within the market maker agreement and within our rules, and people on our platform see this, say, for instance, with 30 seconds left, when it starts to get really, and nobody can realistically price it in that time, right? And it's also dangerous for an individual because you try to hit that at 90, the market's moving so fast you may or may not get filled, but all of a sudden it's sitting at 0, so you hope you didn't get filled. And so we have what we call a blackout period for most of our contracts. And that's just to keep, again, a fair level playing field for all of our market participants. One thing on the market maker front, which is kind of interesting because a lot of people have talked about other markets where the retailers feel like they're just fighting against huge institutions. They're getting chopped up in the market. It's just not fair for them. At Nadex, our market makers don't actually trade. They're there simply to provide liquidity. They're not market takers. So they're stocking the shelves. But when you try to sell something, they're not there to slap your hand. They're there simply to provide liquidity. They're never market takers.
You don't have the HFTs coming in and front-running some order that everyone's always afraid of, right? They're all red flash boys, and they're all terrified. Here comes a massive market-making firm who's going to front-run their 10 lot. So that's not happening on the Nadex platform there, Dan.
That's not happening. Again, we wanted to create the fairest, most level playing field for our members. And those are the individual traders.
Citadel lives to rip off your Aunt Edna from Iowa, right? They want to front run that 10 lot all day long.
Oh yeah, my 5 lot. They're always coming after me on that.
Always beating you to the punch. One thing I'm always curious about with you guys. You kind of mentioned the growth. We see it in the equity and index options landscape. There's a pretty strong correlation, I think, to put it mildly, between volatility levels and what we see in the overall options market. 2017 was a year where, surprise, surprise, the Trump administration comes into office and volatility goes down. Who would have thought that? So that surprised a lot of people, and we saw volume kind of tail off as a result. In 2018, kicks off, a lot of volume, a lot of volatility, a lot of bad events as well, so a bit of a mix there. We saw huge volume. This year can't really match that, but pretty close, so another kind of quick record year, and volatility was not quite high, but at least frothy enough to keep things going. Do you see the same correlation with what you guys do over there at Nadex? Because it sounds like you guys have kind of been steadily growing year after year, almost kind of regardless of what's going on in the broad market. So is volatility a big driver for volume with you guys? And if not, what is it that's really driving folks to trade on the Nadex platform these days?
Nadex, like any exchange, volatility helps. That's when people find opportunity. I mean, there's great opportunities at Nadex, in the slowest of markets, but it's when volatility, people want that action. There's no question about that. So we do see that, and volatility really helps grow. Anytime there's big headlines and it just makes more people aware of the markets, let's face it, we're still very much in an acquisition phase. We actually started a Refer a Friend program back in early December, really because our best sources are word of mouth. Right? People trust their friends and family, and we try to earn that trust every day. So we're still in acquisition phase, so we should be growing, and I believe I'm expected to help that growth, whether we have volatility or not. It just makes it a heck of a lot easier when we have volatility.
You're doing your job then as the director of business development to develop some business, sir, when the rest of the industry is struggling. So my hat's, if I was wearing a hat, I would tip it to you at this point. Interesting, speaking of kind of getting ahead of the curve a little bit there, you guys were, as far as I know, some of the earliest major adopters in this space of crypto. I mean, you were coming on here and talking to me about your Bitcoin index and the other stuff. I forgot how many years ago now. It was quite a while ago. You were way ahead of, when everyone else kind of really seemed to jump into the space around 2017 when Bitcoin was on the race to 20,000, right? You guys were early so early, in fact, that you kind of delisted it. You were a little bit almost too early. Then you kind of got back into the space and you've added more. I think you're adding some more now. We, of course, have been adding a lot more crypto content to the network over the course of the past year. So what can folks trade on the crypto front over there in Nadex these days, sir?
Certainly, and you're right. I believe it was 2014, which, if you say 2014, seems like yesterday, but it was actually 6 years ago.
Yes.
And it was long before anybody was really talking about crypto in any meaningful way.
People knew what Bitcoin was, obviously, and there were a few people here or there maybe came to the network and mentioned it to us, but no one had kind of an established quote-unquote derivatives product like you guys did. So you certainly get pride of place for that, sir.
Yeah, in that case, we were probably a bit too early. But, that happens. We're always trying to innovate. We're trying to listen to our members and customers and find out what's interesting to them. And they can help guide us. We're going to be relaunching a crypto contract very soon, probably, I would guess, within the next month and a half or so. It's pretty much been spec'd out. We mentioned market makers earlier. I've got to have the market makers that are there to provide the liquidity. But it's going to be a very interesting contract. You're not going to need to, one of the nice things is you can be long or short with the same amount of ease, same type of collateral requirements. You don't have to worry about, your crypto keys, your cold storage, anything like that. It's all cash settled contract. And it can be traded very quickly. It can be used as a hedge. Let's say you're holding a fair amount of crypto and you just don't want to sell it, which is often common on a lot of the exchanges. We're giving you the opportunity where, hey, I want just the short-term exposure because I think this is going to happen. I want to hedge against some short-term exposure, but not give up my position. You'll have that flexibility as well.
Just given what we've seen in the growth and evolution, just since we started doing our show back in January this year, so pretty much over the course of the past year, the evolution we've seen in the derivatives side of the space, more firms coming on board, more market makers, more players, more large exchanges like CME about to launch their options. So it definitely is a much more fertile space now for what you guys are launching these days than it was, say, a few years ago. So it seems like the time is right, Dan, to get back into those waters, sir.
I believe it is, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think just our contract offering and the way the market has changed, the overall structure, particularly with Bitcoin, it's changed dramatically over the years, which allows a lot more flexibility and a lot, I guess, cleaner markets, and markets that can be really fairly priced than what it ever has previously. So I think you're right. I think right now, and I really hope you're right, right now is the time for us to get this relaunched.
You have my certified 50% guarantee of success, sir. So head on out there and prosper at your own risk. But one of the other things you're mentioning, kind of talking about going back a little bit in time, going back to the old days. Some listeners may not know, Nadex actually started its incarnation way back in the primordial ooze days as a hedge street. And at the time, you guys were effectively one of the first that I knew of event derivatives platforms. You were out there actually putting out contracts. I remember being there at the press event for the launch at the FIA conference and thinking this is an interesting new addition to the space. Over time, that platform morphed into what is now Nadex, and you kind of did away with the event contracts for a variety of reasons. Some of it regulatory, some of it other headwinds out there. But I know every time you used to come on the network, and this goes back years and you and I were first talking, people always asked about, what about the event contracts? It's an interesting space. We talk about things people can wrap their heads around. People can wrap their heads around the event space very easily. Depends, there's all different ways you can carve that space up. So I think you and I have been talking about the event space for years now. I know it's something you guys have had on the drawing board for a while, trying to bring it back. A little birdie may have told me in the form of a press release that may indeed be the case coming soon here, Dan. So what do you have up your sleeve on the event side? All the people who've been reaching out to us and to you guys asking, are these products going to make a return? What are we going to see?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. Well, the press release already went out, but for your listeners, I'm happy to announce that. The first week of January, we're starting with 2 event contracts: non-farm payroll and weekly jobless claims. A lot of excitement around it. We had previously listed them. Again, it was kind of one that we always listed and never really marketed, never really did a lot of education on, and that's all changing. We're actually going to be out there actively pushing it. I think they're really fun and interesting. It gives you a chance, for instance, non-farm payroll. This is a huge market-moving event. The economic ramifications can be massive, right? How many millions have people spent on algorithms to try to analyze this report as fast as possible to get their positions on? And being able to trade this event as a single basically single tick, is very interesting to me. And the more I researched, and it was really customer demand, member demand that really brought this back. It's fascinating because I can actually look at that consensus, and it gives me an opportunity to say, you know what, I think they're wrong on this one. Because I'm watching the news, I'm seeing this, I think they could be wrong, and I could actually benefit financially from my opinion. A lot of people that are looking at these will trade our other contracts as well, so it's a natural pathway. But quite frankly, it's a lot of fun to trade these. I've been trading them now in demo. Full disclosure, I'm not allowed to trade Nadex live. I have to remain unbiased, but in demo. And quite frankly, it is a lot of fun to trade these contracts. And it doesn't cost a whole lot to make it very interesting.
This is a product segment that we have talked about for years. This could really open the floodgates. People always look to me and come to us and ask us, what type of product, what is it that could really, kick off the next wave of new folks coming into the space and adopting not just binaries, but options and all these other things. It takes some sort of gateway type product like that. There has to be something that they understand and can wrap their heads around fairly intuitively. And the event space, I've said for years, if someone can crack this nut, this is the way to really bring, because we've seen this. And of course, the next question everyone's going to ask listening to this, Dan, is they've seen other interesting iterations. They've asked us for ages, back when we were doing the Futures Roundtable show, they would always write in asking, what about event contracts? And they would always ask, what about things on the politics side, and what about things on the sports side? Those are obviously two sexy areas. Doesn't sound like the regulators are quite there yet, but what's your take on that side of the event space, sir?
Well, going back a ways, the 2012 election, we did apply for political event contracts based on the presidential election. Doing some research, I thought they were a great idea. A little history here. They were actually huge in the early 1900s on the Curb Exchange in New York. They would have basically binary options on presidential elections. In some days, they would do more volume than the NYSE in total. And so I found them very interesting. And also in studying history, they were a lot more accurate than the polls. Now, obviously, we'd
That's always the case with anything with real money, right? It always beats any other indicator you could find.
Absolutely. When people are putting their money up, that's their real opinion. And so I found them fascinating. Now, obviously, we'd want rules and regulation, right? Manipulation is something you always want to avoid. But if you set reasonable position limits and it's a $100 contract and maybe you can have a total of 100 contracts on, that's hardly in the realm of the super PAC, right? That's still a very retail trade. You're not going to see, and really with the flow of individuals, you get a very great sense of what that true market may be and what those opinions are. Could be very useful from an information standpoint.
Well, that'd be fascinating. Let's look at it now. We have exit polls, and they're all nonsense. They can't predict the day of the election. Who the hell's going to win? But if you saw a huge flow of money going into candidate X, you might think, oh, interesting. Maybe the tide is turning, or something else, or a hedging activity on candidate Y. That would all be real time. It would be fascinating. As you mentioned, this is something you can actually rely on. The analysis that goes into real money trading usually is pretty good. So it sounds like the regulators aren't quite there yet, Dan?
Not quite there on the political event space, but on the sports side, that's obviously something we're very interested in. We've seen a lot of potential markets open up that just were not open from a regulatory perspective, a federal perspective before. We're not going to be able to launch anything tomorrow. Quite frankly, I wish I could. But I think to me that makes a really interesting type of contract, obviously very popular. Everybody knows sports. And with the nature of not being an all or nothing, it actually gives a lot more flexibility. If you could think of a binary option, say, on a football game, and let's say it was 50-50 going into that game, and so you bought your contract at 50, thinking you're going to get your $100 to get your 50 back, and all of a sudden your team's down by 14, and you're sitting at you could sell it at 30 because there's still time value like an option.
Get something, yeah. It's not an all or nothing wager like Vegas, right?
Think about the Super Bowl a couple years ago, where we had what was the
Brady one. I've often thought about that, man. Live wagering on that one must have been. You could have got the Patriots for all nothing.
You could have got them at what, a 3 delta, and if that. And there you go. They would have settled at 100. So I mean, it's things like that. Or if let's say you had Atlanta sitting at, you bought them because they were a little bit of an underdog going in there. Maybe you bought them at 30, and now they're sitting at 90 or even 90, probably 96 at that point. Why don't you close out at halftime and walk away and say, hey, I made my 66. I'm not going to risk 66 or 96 for another 4. I think the whole principle of that, and something that we can't do at this point, but something that we are very interested in exploring. And particularly as this opens up state by state and even federal regulations, it becomes a very interesting proposition.
Have you seen all these interesting kind of backdoor platforms to what is effectively sports wagering, right? All these $1 billion DraftKings, all these other things that are popping up that are effectively end runs around that, right? So it'd be nice if we could see something in the actual derivative space that is licensed, that you're right, allows people to get in and out. Because effectively now, wagers are effectively binary, right? It's 0 or 100. You make your bet in Vegas or whatever your platform is, and you get it back if they win. You don't get it back if you lose. It's 0 or 100. There's very little middle ground there. A platform like yours, where things are trading actively, you're right. You could get out at 90 something and not have to wait till the event is over. So I think that offers a lot of attractive, and so just everyone who's going to write in after listening to this asking about that there. We covered it now for you. Not quite coming yet, but hopefully soon. Well, Dan, we covered a lot of interesting stuff. So we covered the upgrade on the platform. We talked about some of the new interesting stuff you have cooking up over there. You have some new features. Talked about, what you're working on in the crypto space and, of course, in the event space. So you already kind of gave them some interesting peeks behind the curtain of what's coming down soon. But that said, if you want to leave our audience, Dan, with a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a tease of what's coming down the pike from you guys at Nadex, now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, in addition to those, and we have covered a lot, we're really that entire onboarding journey. We just launched a new payment solution, which makes it easier to deposit. More importantly, makes it a lot easier to withdraw from an account verification. It's much more towards the advanced industry standard now. It's a lot better than even a lot of firms offer and very secure. That, along with a redesign of the website, much more intuitive, easier to use, and a whole new education center, which we're working on diligently, all being launched. So we're staying busy over there, and we're really looking forward to 2020 to bringing all of this cool new tools, innovation, better experience to all of our members and all of our future members.
And if folks want to kick the tires for themselves, see what you guys are up to, where should they go? What should they do, Dan?
They should go to nadex.com, Nadex.com. Right on the front page, you can apply for your demo account. It takes about 30 seconds. Or you can apply for a live account at the same time. You don't have to fund right away. You can go in and take a look at the live markets, which actually, because of the liquidity providers paying more attention to those, the bid offer spreads a lot of times in the live market are substantially tighter than the demo, which is a good way to have it that way around.
You don't see that too often. That's nice.
No, and you know what? If you do decide to open up your account, one of the last questions we're going to ask is, how did you hear about us? Make sure you put in Options Insider, handsome Mark Longo if you feel up
That's
to it.
That's what the drop down says.
Handsome Mark Longo. Yep, exactly. But yeah, just go to nadex.com. You'll see it right on the homepage. Take a tour around. You know what? Also, just about everywhere on the website, on the platform, there's a feedback button. Let us know. We take it very seriously. We want to improve the experience. We often say we can be happy, just never satisfied. We've always got to continue to improve, and we don't want to do that without the guidance of our members.
Well, Dan, I'm glad to get you on. We'll have to do it more frequently than once every, 2+ years now that we've been checking in. It sounds like a lot has been cooking over there at Nadex since the last time we chatted, and we'll look forward to seeing how all this, the crypto, the events, all the upgrades, how all this plays out in the marketplace in the coming months, sir.
It was great being on again, Mark. Great speaking with you, as always. And yes, let's make this more of a regular occasion.
Once every, let's say, 18 to 20 months. Make it a little short. A
little shorter than that.
A little short. All right. Nadex.com, listeners, is the place to go. Do you have any social media handles you want to share out there, too? How can folks find you on the Twitters and all that good stuff?
Oh, yes. On Twitter at Nadex, Facebook at Nadex. Put it in the search tab. We're very easy to find. You go to Instagram, at Nadex.
So, don't go to Instagram, though. It's all photos of Dan there on his vacations. You don't want to see that.
I wish I had some vacations, but nobody would want to see those photos either.
All right, at Nadex on all the major platforms, or just nadex.com, Nadex.com is the place to go. And like we said, we'll look forward to seeing how all this plays out. We'll look forward to seeing you back here again for more episodes of Options Insider Radio.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.